Hey there everyone, I'm Jeff and this is Tabletop Toolbox. Today I'll be telling you about FormulaGP, a new tabletop board game coming to GameFound that's inspired by F1 racing. So in that vein, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. That's right, race fans, I'm back with another crowdfunding preview video. And as I said, this time I'm looking at FormulaGP. And I may have already misled you a little bit when I said that this is inspired by F1 racing. Because folks, this is Formula One in a box. There is so much F1 theory crammed into this box that it is, in a word, impressive. You see, this game was designed by Paweł Lichnowsky and Łukasz Kaczynowicz. And if you talk to Paweł for just a few minutes, you will quickly realize that he is passionate about F1 racing. And he has put in the time and effort to cram a lot of that passion into this box. Now, just a few things to kick us off here. This is a prototype copy of the game. It's quite a good one, but a few things have already changed, and I'm going to point some of those things out later in the video, so definitely keep that in mind. Next, there are 3 different modes of play in this game, and I'm not going to cover all of them in great detail. In fact, I'm not really going to fully teach this game because, as I said, it is a prototype and things are still evolving. Plus, this is a fairly complex game. There's a lot to deal with. I'm not going to call it heavy necessarily, but it certainly is not a light game, even in its easiest modes of play. So instead, I'm going to walk you through some of the different components. I'm going to tell you about those 3 modes of play, and then I'm going to share with you some of my own impressions of the game after a few plays here to help you decide if it's something you want to add to your collection. So with that in mind, let's get it to the table. The first thing I'll talk about is the track, which uses cutting-edge jigsaw technology. Okay, don't get me wrong, I'm not making fun of this at all. In fact, I love the way that these track pieces simply snap together. You see, racing has been done a lot of different ways in the board gaming hobby. You've got the large, possibly 2-sided map boards in games like Formula Day and Downforce. But as you start to acquire expansion content, you quickly find yourself with something like this, these massive heavy stacks of cardboard that you have to find some place to store once they no longer fit in the base box. Not to mention, these kind of limit you to the creativity of the designer and or publisher. If they don't come out with a track that you really want to play on, you're kind of shit out of luck unless you want to go through some heavy DIY effort. Now, I will say that these are quite efficient in terms of setup, and they usually don't come apart on you during gameplay. Up next, you've got the hex-based track creation system used by the newest Rallyman GT. And I'm going to level with you, I really like this game, but setting this up, I mean literally setting this track up for this shot took forever. And it is so easy to knock these things out of alignment as you play. This thing needs some jigsaw technology. These puzzle pieces give you the flexibility of custom tracks and so provides the security of a one-piece board. Now, puzzle pieces can have one problem, and that is that you can build these long, complex, and winding circuits only to find out that the track doesn't quite line back up with itself when you go to close the circuit, especially if you only have one length of straight track. This was always a big problem with the game of Pitch Car. FormulaGP avoids that pretty easily, though, by providing a variety of lengths of straight tracks, making it much easier to line things up and complete your circuit course. Okay, I've rambled on too long about the track here already, so I'm going to go ahead and move on by first talking about, well, more track. Because my other favorite part is setting up a custom pit row, complete with garage slots for each player, and a safety car, and even rounding it out with some car trailers and grandstands. Alright, now I'll move on to other components. Up first, of course, are the little F1 cars that you'll use to indicate your positions around the track. And there are also a ton of different tokens to use in this game, including stress tokens, tire tokens, green, yellow, blue, and black flags, gear markers, debris, gravel, damage, and parameter tokens. You'll also find a variety of different types of cards, and here's where I'm going to start to talk about the different modes of play in FormulaGP. These are the action cards. You'll play a variety of these on each of your turns, and they come in a few different flavors. These cards are used specifically for movement, and while I'll cover that in a moment, you'll see that there are a variety of different icons on each card. These small numbers within the card's main image are used only for the sprint mode. Now, the sprint mode is geared more towards slightly younger players or more novice gamers, but in general, you'll play a card to move the number of spaces shown on that card. Movement cards come in green, red, or blue, indicating the different speeds in the game, but speed comes at the cost of maneuverability. You see, green and red cards will let you change lanes while moving, but red cards will increase tire wear if you do. Blue cards don't let you change lanes at all. Now this is quite different from other racing games, and it does make passing a significant challenge. More on that though in a moment. Now I did just mention tire wear. Tire wear is prevalent in all three modes of the game. In general, as you move around the track, your distance of movement is increased by the type of tires that you've chosen for your car. But in the standard and advanced modes, not only do your tires wear, but eventually that bonus to your movement will be reduced or even eliminated. Not only that, but the designers have incorporated modern F1 rules that require you to change the type of tire at least once during a race. Now, there are a ton of different mechanics to tire wear in this game, and I just can't get to all of them in this video. But in general, the tire management does add a significant layer of strategy and complexity across this game. Now, changing lanes and passing, as I already mentioned, is a bit more challenging in FormulaGP than it is in some other racing games. Passing another car in FormulaGP requires a battle between you and the car you're trying to get around. I found that a bit surprising, but not as surprising as it was to learn that that is actual terminology used in F1 racing, and there are specific rules for how attacking and defending drivers must behave, and those rules differ amongst straightaways, corners, braking zones, and more. It's insane. And while there are some lengthy rules to this game as far as how you'll pass other cars, and I'm not going to get into all of them right now, the general concept is that a player has to stop before pulling alongside another car on the track. Any remaining movement is stored on their player board using points of overtake. Then the battling players simultaneously play cards from their hand and total up the LEDs in the battle corner of each card to determine a winner. If the attacker wins, they'll spend their overtake points to complete the pass on the defending driver. Now, as I mentioned, there is a bit here that I'm leaving out, including the rules for a wheel-to-wheel battle, which occurs if a player doesn't have quite enough points of overtake to fully get around the defending car. But what I will say is that while I was a bit intimidated at first to teach this mechanism to my gaming buddies, we found in execution that it was a bit easier to manage than we were expecting, and it was a fairly suspenseful aspect of the game. Ugh, I'm on page 3 of my script already and I feel like I've barely told you anything. Alright, let me finish up talking about the movement. I mentioned the cards having different purposes for different race modes. In standard and advanced race modes, the track actually dictates how fast your car can move. Each track piece in the game shows a gear symbol, and your player board, which is used in standard and advanced race modes, shows you how many spaces each colored card will let you move based on that gear. Now your movement, as I already mentioned, is boosted by your tire type and condition, but not only that, on most spaces of the track you can combine two cards of the same color to move the distance allowed by the next color up. You will, however, have to roll a yellow hazard die, which could result in additional driver stress, more wear to your tires, or even requiring you to draw a risk card, which could result in more negative consequences. Now in the advanced mode of play, corners have speed limits which penalize players who go through the corner with movement from a card of a color higher than the one shown on the speed limit token. That penalty is dictated by the risk die, which could cause you to draw another risk card, increase your tire wear, or cause a dreaded spinout. These speed limit tokens are pretty neat because they let you further customize your track beyond just laying out these tiles. They let you really add to the realism of this game. You can punctuate the difficulty of a tight corner by imposing a tighter speed limit on it, or even manage speeds on short straightaways between consecutive corners. The advanced mode also adds a weather radar and weather cards. Weather can change throughout the event, and you'll draw one of these cards at the beginning of your race to determine if there is a chance of showers later on in the event, and if there is, you'll place these puddle tokens on the track. The advanced mode also uses these team radio cards. Now players will have these in addition to their default hand size, and these could open up some additional strategic options to help them out on their turn. Advanced mode also unlocks the icons in the top right corner of these action cards. These can help you recover from a spin, improve your tire condition, and more. And there is still so much more here that I haven't covered, like the energy recovery system, a real F1 system that stores energies from the car that can then be used for a quick burst in speed, especially helpful for those one-on-one battles. There's also these parameter tokens. These kind of help provide a little luck mitigation from these action cards. There's also the drag reduction system that can help players get a quick boost of straight line speed, especially if they're following behind other vehicles. There's also the yellow caution zones that come out in the event of a crash or a safety car that can come out if the track gets a little too hazardous. Is all that enough for you? No? Well, that's good because there's still more, like an entire deck of asymmetrical drivers that behave differently on your turn, especially if they get a little too stressed out. You've also got these different cards with their own settings that act differently on the track. You also have event cards, there's joker cards, and you know what, there's probably even more than I'm forgetting, all crammed into the standard size box. And honestly, it can be a little bit daunting even for a seasoned gamer. But what is so nice about this game is how much you can customize the experience to the ways that you want to play it. Do you want some of that additional realism, but maybe not all the rules of the advanced mode? That's fine. You can add some of those speed limit tokens, maybe toss in the team radio cards, but leave out the AI bots or the weather system. If you're a little adverse to luck, you can leave out some of the tire wear cards that just sort of gum up your hand on your turn. And honestly, it's this ability to customize the experience that means you can get as much or as little as you want out of FormulaGP. Alright, I think I've talked enough about components here. Let me get to my general thoughts on this game. Honestly, FormulaGP is not going to be for everyone. This is a fairly complex game. Even that sprint mode I began talking about still has things like the one-on-one battles, the hazard dice, the challenge in changing lanes, the caution zones, the safety car, and more. The standard mode does further beef up those rules, but it's still not a fully realistic experience since with the right card and the right tires, a player can zip pretty far around the track in a single move. The advanced mode, of course, adds a good amount of overhead with things like additional decks of cards, the weather system, and more, and it can slow down the experience a little bit. But at that point, your realism is at full tilt, and you will have to employ some clever planning and some forethought in each of your turns. Of course, still, in each one of these modes of play, there is a generous dose of luck at the hand of this large stack of action cards. But listen, it's very, very rare to find a tabletop racing board game that doesn't employ a little luck, usually at the hand of dice, in this instance using cards. But that's not to say that there isn't plenty of decision space in this game. For one, I really like the ability to push your car a little further at the end of your turn at the expense of your tires or using your ERS system to hopefully put yourself in a better spot for the next turn. I also really like the card management here. As I mentioned, there are these tire wear cards that don't permit movement and just clog up your hand. You can discard these to take tire wear in order to hopefully get better cards next turn. Or you can decide, hey, I got plenty of good cards here to work with, I'm just going to kind of see how this goes and keep my tires in good shape. I also really appreciate Pavel's passion to F1 racing and how that comes through in this game. From the pace car to the DRS zones to even these updated player boards that represent an actual F1 car steering wheel, the pure love of Formula One is dripping from every component in this box. Hey everyone, Jeff, your friendly editor here. You're looking at Tabletop Simulator right now because you see, I actually filmed this video a while ago, but Pavel and Łukasz have been continuing to tweak and refine this game. So I wanted to take just a moment to let you know about some changes to FormulaGP since the prototype you've seen in this footage. First of all, there's a new deck of system failure cards that may come into play throughout the game. These could trigger minor malfunctions within a player's car, which they can pit to repair or employ some clever card play to help deal with these issues on the fly. But the biggest change, or perhaps improvement if you ask me, is that Pavel broke up that large and random deck of action cards into individual player decks, much like in the game of Heat, Pedal to the Metal. This drastically reduces the randomness within FormulaGP and makes it easier for players to plan ahead. There are a handful of other tweaks, many of which came from a community of playtesters, including those who played the game in this very room. Okay, back to, me. So that is FormulaGP, which you can check out over on the GameFound page, which I'll provide a link to in this video's description. Go check it out, and maybe you'll be ready to go full throttle when the rubber meets the road. Cheers.